You check your phone 47 times today. You scroll past hundreds of faces. You are, by every measure, more connected than any human who has ever lived. And yet, a growing number of researchers believe you are dying from loneliness anyway. Not metaphorically, literally. Faster than a 2-pack a day smoking habit. That sentence sounds absurd the first time you hear it. It sounded absurd to scientists too, until they ran the numbers. Your brain did not evolve for the world you live in now. It evolved on the savannah, in small bands of 20 to 50 people, where being cut off from the group did not mean a quiet Tuesday night alone. It meant death. A lone human on the plains 200,000 years ago had no one to watch for predators while they slept. No one to help gather food during a bad season. No one to defend them from a rival group. So evolution did something clever. It made isolation feel like danger, not sadness. Danger. The same ancient alarm system that once fires when a predator moves through tall grass now fires when you eat dinner alone for the third night in a row. This is where the story gets strange and where a psychologist named John Cacioppo comes in. Cacioppo spent decades at the University of Chicago studying something almost nobody else took seriously at the time. He wanted to know what loneliness actually does to the body, not just the mind. What he found reshaped an entire field. Using brain scans and blood work, Cacioppo discovered that chronic loneliness triggers the same stress response as physical threat. Cortisol rises, inflammation increases, the immune system, built to fight off infection, starts behaving as if the body itself is under siege. Your ancestors needed that response for a night alone in hostile territory. You do not need it for a night alone with Netflix. But your body cannot tell the difference. Here is the part that made headlines. In 2010, a researcher named Julianne Holt-Lundstad led a massive analysis pulling together data from over 300,000 people across dozens of long-term studies. She wanted a simple answer to a simple question. How much does social connection actually affect how long you live? The result was not simple at all. People with strong social relationships had a 30% lower risk of death across the study period, regardless of age, sex, or existing health conditions. 30%. To put that number next to something familiar, the increased mortality risk from loneliness rivaled that of smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. It exceeded the risk from obesity. It exceeded the risk from physical inactivity. Loneliness was not just uncomfortable. It was, statistically, one of the most dangerous conditions a person could quietly carry around. Why would isolation do this to a body? The answer traces back even further to a study that started in 1965 in Alameda County, California. Researchers Lisa Berkman and Leo Breslow began tracking thousands of residents, checking back in on them for years, then decades. What they noticed was strange. People with fewer social ties were dying earlier, and not from any single cause. Heart disease, stroke, certain cancers. It was not one illness driving the pattern. It was something upstream of all of them, something systemic. Berkman's work helped establish what is now a foundational idea in medicine. Social isolation is not a mental health footnote. It is a measurable physical risk factor, on par with high blood pressure or high cholesterol. Think about what that means for a moment. Your grandmother's Sunday dinners were not just nice. They were, in a very real biological sense, medicine. The porch conversations, the neighbors who knew your name, the small talk with the same cashier every week. None of it felt important while it was happening. It felt ordinary. But ordinary connection was quietly regulating your nervous system the entire time. Now consider what has changed. You probably know more people, in a loose sense, than any human in history. You can message someone on another continent in less time than it takes to boil water. But loneliness rates in many countries have climbed, not fallen, over the same decades that digital connection exploded. How is that possible? Cacioppo had a theory for this too, and it is the twist that makes this whole story so uncomfortable. He argued that loneliness is not about how many people surround you. It is about the gap between the connection you have and the connection you need. You can be in a crowded office, surrounded by coworkers, and still register as isolated to your own nervous system because none of those interactions carry the weight your ancient brain is scanning for. Depth, reliability, Someone who would notice if you disappeared. A group chat does not fully satisfy that ancient alarm. Neither does a like on a photo. Your body is running software built for tribes, and it is being fed substitutes that look similar on the surface but register as almost nothing underneath. There is a kind of experiment happening right now at a scale no lab could ever design. Billions of people living with more surface-level contact than any generation before them, and reporting less of the deep connection their biology was built to require. Some researchers now describe this as a mismatch, the same word used to explain why modern diets high in sugar wreck bodies built for scarcity. Your body craves sugar because scarcity once made it rare and valuable. Your body craves belonging because isolation once made it deadly. In both cases, the modern world gave you unlimited access to the signal without the substance that used to come attached to it. So what actually counts as enough? Researchers who followed up on Holt-Lundstad's findings kept circling back to a surprisingly small threshold. It was not about having dozens of friends. In many studies, the protective effect showed up with just a handful of close relationships, people who could be called at 2 in the morning without hesitation. Quality mattered more than quantity, by a wide margin. A single person who truly knows you appears to do more for your biology than 100 acquaintances who know your name. This changes how you might look at the small moments you usually dismiss. The friend you have been meaning to call back. The coworker you always mean to grab lunch with but never do. The parent whose call you let go to voicemail because you are tired. Your evolutionary history is not gently suggesting you reconnect. It is, in a very real sense, keeping score. Every one of those postponed conversations is a small vote for isolation, cast by a brain built for tribes, and your body is listening whether you meant it to or not. There is something almost beautiful hidden inside this uncomfortable science. Your ancestors survived not because they were the strongest or the fastest. They survived because they figured out, hundreds of thousands of years before anyone could measure cortisol or run a regression analysis, that other people were not a luxury. They were survival infrastructure. That instinct never left you. It is still running, quietly, underneath every scroll and every notification, waiting for something it recognizes as real. You check your phone 47 times today, but somewhere underneath that habit, a much older system is still checking for something else entirely. Not a message, not a like, a person who would notice if you were gone.